Happy Monday, everybody. Hope you all had a great weekend. We are here live on Monday, August the 28th. We are almost to football season, 10 days away, a week from Thursday nights, Thursday, September 7th. We got the NFL returning. We got some college football this past weekend in week 0, but it really starts Thursday, Florida, Utah. Matt Wright will be on the program on Thursday. We're going to tee up the college football season. I can't wait to talk to him once again. It's been a minute, and we both love the sport so very much. So I'm excited to dive into that with him. We'll also be doing a NFC East preview on Tuesday. So that's coming up. So much more previews. We got 3 previews left before the start of the season. I got my quarterback rankings. So we have some content to bring to you over the next 10 days. But today, UFC Singapore from over the weekend. We're going to dive into that, the big results, the retirement of the Korean Zombie. The US Open begins. It's ongoing. Started about 20 minutes ago. Another Canadian pulled out of the main draw, which I kind of predicted last week. Not a big surprise. We'll talk about that briefly. Huge injury in Baltimore in Major League Baseball. If you missed this from over the weekend, I got you covered. Wild card standings, if you're a Blue Jays fan, you must just be despondent beyond repair following an extra innings loss to the Cleveland Guardians yesterday. Just pathetic, although their schedule is as easy as it's going to get over the next 2 weeks. So we'll talk about that. College football briefly. And, of course, Viktor Hovland winning the Tour Championship yesterday. And I was wrong last week. It was $15 million last year. It's $18 million this year. $18 million prize. What a day for Rick. But we're starting with the NFL. The NFL preseason is over. I watched a lot of it, which I don't love watching preseason sports, but I think the NFL is the best preseason sport to watch. It's much better than hockey. And I watched a lot of that Houston and New Orleans game last night on Fox. And after the game, we learned that Trey Lance, going to get that in a second. CJ Stroud is the QB1 of the Houston Texans. Not a big surprise. He was their starting quarterback in all of their preseason games, but he is a rookie. Davis Mills has started many games for Houston, but DeMeco Ryans, new head coach, announced it is CJ Stroud's team. They're rebuilding. They got their quarterback. They took Will Anderson, 3rd in the draft. So they're going to see what they can do this season. They do have some good players. Offensive line is good when healthy. That's a big thing. They have some injuries right now, but CJ Stroud will be the starting quarterback for the Houston Texans. The big news from over the weekend, however, in the NFL. We're talking Trey Lance on Friday, and I thought that Trey Lance, he needs out of San Francisco. Doesn't help him to be the 3rd quarterback there. He needs a change of scenery. And I talked about the Dolphins. I talked about the Minnesota Vikings. A team I did not see coming was the Dallas Cowboys, which Friday night, John Lynch, the general manager of the San Francisco 49ers, traded Trey Lance to Dallas for a 4th-round pick in the 2024 NFL Draft. And basically, this was a big story for a couple reasons. Trey Lance goes to a team with 2 quarterbacks ahead of him in the depth chart. Cooper Rush, who's been the Dallas backup for some time, and obviously Dak Prescott, who is their franchise quarterback. But Dak Prescott was not told about this trade. He was not consulted on it, and he brought that up to the media, that he was not that happy, that he was not given a heads up. And Jerry Jones did the Jerry Jones thing where he says, well, I didn't feel Dak had to be told. It's not that big of a deal. We brought in Trey Lance, this, that, the other. But you see some dissension among the ranks. You see Dak Prescott said to the media Saturday night, because he called the plays in their last preseason game, that he's going to miss Will Grier. Will Grier is their 3rd-string quarterback. He's been on the practice squad the last couple of years. Said he really enjoyed having him there. They have a good relationship. They're friends. And I will say the Cowboys deserve a lot of criticism most of the time, on the field, off the field, what Jerry Jones does. But they trade for Trey Lance and they tell Will Grier on Friday night, we're cutting you this week. However, we are going to start you the entire preseason game on Saturday night. We're going to give you every snap, and we hope you go out there and ball out. Go show the other 32 teams that you deserve a job. And Will Grier had a hell of a game. 29 for 35, 305 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns, 305 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 10 carries for 53 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. He couldn't have played better. So we'll see what happens with Will Grier. I think Cincinnati should be a team that takes a peek. I watched some of their preseason. Their backup quarterback options are not all that good. Kansas City, potentially, with Will Grier. He played at West Virginia, so I think he will be picked up because he does have some talent. But there's that element of it. But Trey Lance goes to Dallas. I don't think it's the best situation for him. He was a third quarterback in San Francisco. He's the third quarterback in Dallas. He arrives to a team at the end of training camp where he doesn't know their playbook. He's going to have to learn it on the fly, and he's not going to have the ability to play this year. He might not be dressed for many of these games. At least early on, he will not be the backup quarterback to Dak Prescott. That is Cooper Rush. Cooper Rush started 5 games last year for the Cowboys. He went 4-1 in those starts. So it's a weird situation. I think he's excited to be out of San Francisco because it's new. But at the same time, if he gets traded somewhere else, maybe he's the backup. But reportedly, Buffalo was in the mix for Trey Lance, and Dallas offered a better package. They went with Buffalo offered a 5th-round pick. Dallas went with a 4th, so that's where he ended up going. So I think if you're Trey Lance, you're excited for the fresh opportunity, but I wouldn't be excited with the location because I don't think I'm going to get snaps. I don't think I'm going to get looks. How many reps am I going to get in practice from the third-string quarterback during the middle of the season? You hear guys talk about this all the time, that you're a practice squad guy, you're the third stringer, you're not getting many reps. And he kind of needs to play. That's another weakness for him. But he gets out of San Francisco. And yeah, Brock Purdy, they got Sam Darnold. He was never going to play. So that's the big news for them. What's interesting through all of this, Trey Lance has thrown 420-odd snaps. He's thrown 420 footballs in a game since he left high school. He's been in the NFL for 3 years. He played 1 year at college, and then he missed one due to COVID. But since his last year of high school, he's thrown 420 passes in game action. Missed most of all last year. Had some injuries coming in his second year in the NFL. Jimmy Garoppolo, Brock Purdy usurping him. So it was a constant failure. But you think back, he's playing at a Division 1 AA school, North Dakota State. And at the time, the San Francisco 49ers traded their 2021, their 2022, and their 2023 first-round pick to land Trey Lance. Traded that to the Miami Dolphins. Moving up from 10 to 3. Looking back at the draft, they take Trey Lance. Justin Fields was still on the board. He went at 11. Mac Jones was still on the board. He went at 15. Micah Parsons was still on the board. He went at 12, and you're not looking for a quarterback. But just to reference point here, there were some good players available to San Francisco if they just stay where they are. They could have taken Justin Fields, who people might be out on. People might not like him, but he can't throw from the pocket. He can't do this. All I know is he's played more. He rushed for 1,000 yards last year, and Trey Lance has thrown 420 passes since high school. And the thing is, San Francisco trades 3 first-round picks, and that trade, when you get a player, you take him 3rd overall, and he hardly plays for you, and then you dump him for a 4th-round pick to Dallas, that sounds cataclysmic. That sounds like we got to fire this guy. But no, John Lynch remains employed. John Lynch is a good general manager because he locked into Brock Purdy. He locked into Brock Purdy with Mr. Irrelevant, the last pick in last year's NFL draft. If the 49ers didn't have Brock Purdy, this would be a disaster, and he'd have some heat under his ass. But despite trading 3 first-round picks, and despite the fact that Trey Lance was an absolute bust, they've been to 2 straight NFC Championship games with a 7th-rounder and porn star Jimmy at quarterback. That's how good the rest of the team, that's how good he is at forming the rest of the team. He doesn't know a quarterback to save his life. It reminds me of New England. Bill Belichick can't draft wide receivers. He doesn't know a good one. He can draft quarterbacks and turn them into wide receivers, but he doesn't. He drafts N'Keal Harry. He trades for Devontae Parker. He doesn't know. He's had one Randy Moss Tom Brady's entire career. Give me Danny Amendola, cut from the Jets. Give me Julian Edelman. If he needs to scout a guy from college, that's going to be a whiff. You know it is. Same thing with San Francisco. But despite the fact that these 2 general managers have a much different way. I mean, San Francisco hasn't won yet, but they've been to Super Bowl and then 2 NFC Championship games the last 5 years. They overcome their shortcomings. They find out ways to be successful despite the fact that they miss on this certain player. Brock Purdy, I watched him a lot in college. Played a lot of snaps in college, unlike Trey Lance. Played at Iowa State, was successful, was fun, and Brocktober and all this stuff. I never thought he'd be a good NFL quarterback. But here he is. But is he that good of a NFL quarterback, or is it because Kyle Shanahan's just a genius and you have all that talent and you have Nick Bosa on the defense and Fred Warner, the best middle linebacker in football? And so it's honestly so interesting what's happened in San Francisco. You have a team that is primed to compete for a Super Bowl again, despite the fact they haven't had a first-round pick the last 3 years. And their biggest concern right now is Nick Bosa remains unsigned. And we're 10 days away from the start of the NFL season. That is a big deal. They need him. Just like the Kansas City Chiefs need Chris Jones. But they're looking around going, the NFC's not that tough. We're in the NFC Championship game last year. I'm sure they think if Brock Purdy doesn't get hurt and we have a quarterback that can throw, maybe we're in the Super Bowl. Maybe we beat the Chiefs. They had a team to do it. Loaded with talent. Javon Hargraves added to the defense. They did lose to D'Amico Ryans, but they get another good defensive coordinator. But Trey Lance was acquired for 3 first-round picks, and the team hasn't missed a beat. That doesn't happen every team. If we've seen it happen. If the Jets do this, it's misery for a decade. It's Zach Wilson. It's your team sucks. San Francisco remains competitive, remains one of the best teams in football, and look what they did with that draft pick. Nothing with that draft pick. He's a Dallas Cowboy now. And there's debate about the way they handled him. I don't think it was perfect. I think sitting behind him, not playing all that much, not playing preseason games early on in his career, sitting behind Jimmy Garoppolo. But overall, you look at him on the field and you go, is there something there? It's hard to say. It's hard to say because he hasn't played all that much. So I said, go to Miami. Go to Minnesota. Fear those teams. Tua. He's concussion away from Trey Lance starting. Minnesota, Kirk Cousins, last year of his contract. Maybe he's your quarterback next year. And you got a cheap option to play. If they wanted Kirk Cousins to stay, they probably would have paid him already. He's 34. I like him more and more from the quarterback documentary. And I root for Kirk Cousins quietly. I don't have as you all know, I don't have a favorite team. I don't care who wins, but I like Kirk D. Cousins. Seems like a good guy to me. Kind of a nerd, sort of a loser, but I like him. But that would be a smart option, but Dallas picks him up. What will Dallas? Maybe Dallas will have him in packages. Direct runs, some wild. I don't think Dak's gonna jive with that. But again, Mike McCarthy's calling plays in Dallas this year. Not Kellen Moore. He's in Los Angeles with Justin Herbert. And maybe, Dak and Mike aren't on the best of pages. And maybe there's bigger turmoil in Dallas than we know. What we know every year is what can go wrong will go wrong in Dallas because they're the Cowboys. But the thing about the Cowboys is we haven't done their preview yet, doing it tomorrow. They're damn good again. They're damn good. Could they get to the Super Bowl in the NFC? Absolutely. They had the team to do it. I love their team. Eagles are great as well. We'll discuss it all mañana. But should Dallas be competing with the best of the best? Absolutely. So why acquire Trey Lance? Just because? Do they not want to extend Dak beyond his current contract? Is it a trade chip down the line? I don't know. If there's an injury or something, I'll tell you, I think they're going to get some calls for him. Just watching this preseason, there's a lot of bad backup quarterbacks. There's a lot of guys who shouldn't get snaps. And you don't think you need a backup quarterback that's adequate until your main guy's injured. Joe Burrow didn't play a snap in the preseason. And we haven't heard anything he's going to start week 1. I think he is, as I predicted. So I saw him running on the field. But if he doesn't play, it's 7th rounder Trevor Siemian, woof, or Jake Browning, woof. You're not winning a game with either. If they play the Browns week 1 without Joe Burrow, call it, to quote Kevin Malone. It's over. Kansas City, Blaine Gabbert, Shane Buechele, I don't know. Not all that inspiring. Dolphins, Tua, he's healthy. According to Ryan Clark, he's looking thick. Their backup quarterback, Mike White, has a concussion. How the tables have turned. One of the quarterback room's going to have a concussion. But again, if Tua gets hurt, who you turning to if Mike White can't play, for Christ's sake? Patriots could use him. And I'm curious, I read this article last night. Carson Wentz, remember him? Former Eagle, almost an MVP, Super Bowl champion as a backup of Nick Foles. Washington Commander, Indianapolis Colt. He's a free agent. Didn't get a contract, didn't play in the preseason, remains unsigned. I read an article last night, the Kansas City Chiefs are interested in bringing him in as a backup quarterback. I think it's a smart idea. He's not a perfect guy by any means, and you'd love him to not play. That's what a backup is. You sit there, you're a good teammate, you do everything right, and you sit there. And you never touch the field, but you feel good about who's behind you. Kansas City never wants to see somebody else play quarterback for the next decade other than Patrick Mahomes. But Chad Henne retired, and they loved having him as a backup. Blaine Gabbert they brought in thinking he could be the fix. Maybe they're not all that happy with it. Carson Wentz could come in, be a backup quarterback, a veteran, and he's played in playoff games. He's played a lot of snaps. Maybe that's an option. I think more teams should look into it. I think he can still play. Again, he's not your starter, but can he still play? Absolutely. It's an option. But that's the Trey Lance saga, and it ends for now in Dallas. But Dak Prescott not being happy because his buddy Will Grier is out of town. But he'll have to get a little more chipper because he's got to be ready for Trey Lance. He's got to welcome into the quarterback room, and I think it would be fun if they design some plays for Trey Lance in that Dallas offense. Not because I want to see him play, but also I'd love to see how Dak reacts to that. If he has to come off the field for certain plays because they want to get Trey Lance into some packages on that offense, I don't think Dak will like that whatsoever, but that would be fun. Be good drama, be good intrigue. Opening Sunday Night Football, New York Giants, Dallas Cowboys. I doubt he gets reps that early, but maybe throughout the season. Just maybe. Other NFL news, Josh Jacobs, who's been holding out the entirety of training camp, well, he's done with his holdout. He couldn't get a long-term deal done with Las Vegas. He says, I'm not going to play, I might hold out. But the team and Josh agreed to a 1-year, $12 million deal, replacing the franchise tag of $10 million. So he gets a little extra incentives, a little extra salary, a signing bonus. So 1 year, $12 million, then they can either franchise tag him again or he will be a free agent. He led the NFL in carries last year. He led the NFL in rushing, led the NFL in all-purpose yards. So this is truly one of the best running backs in football on a team that I believe is going to have to run the ball a lot because Jimmy Garoppolo is their quarterback. They are not all that talented. They do have Devontae Adams, but they're in a very difficult division. I think they're the worst team in their division. I think the Broncos, over the course of the offseason, new coaching hire, have improved over Vegas, and it's going to be tough for them to remain competitive here. But Josh Jacobs is back. That helps them. The Dolphins inquired on Josh Jacobs reportedly, but Las Vegas is not interested in dealing him. Jonathan Taylor, I saw a report this morning from Stephen Holder, who covers Indianapolis for the Mothership. So it's going to come down to the wire. The Dolphins are making offers. There's another team in the mix reportedly, so 2 teams are in on Jonathan Taylor. Anthony Richardson needs a good running back. His completion percentage in the preseason was 48%. 48%. He's athletic. He can do a lot of things. But it would help him a lot to have a good running back, just to have a stable guy back there to get the run-pass option, to open up passing lanes, and not have all that pressure on him. But the Colts might trade Jonathan Taylor. I think it's a mistake. But I think the Dolphins very much should be in on this. Absolutely. The Cowboys just traded for Trey Lance. I don't see them making another move, but they absolutely should. Tony Pollard, their number 1 running back, coming off a broken leg and a bunch of guys behind him. Zeke's in New England, so you don't have that depth anymore. Cowboys, again, the teams that need him, they're limited. I think it's a team that wants to compete for a Super Bowl that would be in the mix. Kansas City could. I don't think they will. Dallas makes some sense. Maybe the Eagles, but I like the way they set up their running back room, and they're spending so little money on a bunch of different guys. We'll talk about that tomorrow. But that's not a huge need for the Philadelphia Eagles. It would help them, but I don't think it's a must for them. But that'll come down to the wire. Tomorrow is the self-imposed deadline by the Indianapolis Colts for Jonathan Taylor to work out a trade with another team. So I guess if there's not a deal done by tomorrow, he will be an Indianapolis Colt for the entirety of the 2023-2024 season. And that'll be fun, him going back into the locker room knowing that he hates the owner. He doesn't want to be there. They won't give him a long-term contract. And yeah, he's got to play for the entire season for a team that isn't going to be all that good with a rookie quarterback. So yeah, fun times for Jonathan Taylor and the former Wisconsin running back. Let's go to Major League Baseball. Lots happened in baseball over the weekend. Get to the Blue Jays in a second. To me, the biggest news in Major League Baseball over the weekend: Baltimore Orioles all-star closer, the best closer in baseball, Felix Bautista, went on the IL with a UCL injury. Which, if you recall last week, UCL is what Shohei Ohtani has. It's the elbow injury. It basically means you're going to need Tommy John. They had a setup where they went to Yanier Cano and they went to Felix Bautista in the 8th and 9th innings. And both men have ERAs sub 2. It's the best setup in baseball. You got a young team, you get 2 young bullpen arms that are cheap and playing fantastic. And now Bautista, and reports were not all that good. They would not be surprised if Bautista does not pitch again this season. So for Baltimore, you're leading the American League East. You have the best record in the American League. 80 wins already, hunky-dory. But you banked on having this guy in the postseason. You banked on him closing out games when you got a lead. And he might not be available. It's a huge blow. The trade deadline's over. You can't trade. Paul Sewald was traded from the Seattle Mariners to the Arizona Diamondbacks because they wanted a closer. Things can happen, but they're not available right now. So it's not a soul-crushing injury, but it hurts them. Because the strength of the Baltimore Orioles is not their starting pitching, it is their bullpen. Starters give you 5-6 innings. If you have a lead, Colomb into Cano into Bautista, and more often than not, you're going to win the game. They win a lot of close games because their bullpen is so damn good. But now it's a new roadblock for this team. How do you overcome it? How do you battle through this? Cano, I watched a bit of the game Saturday night. He pitched the 9th inning, scoreless. So he's their new closer going forward. Went from the 8th inning to the 9th inning. But it's a different job. Way more pressure pitching in the 9th than it is pitching in the 8th. But he might not be back. Might not be back for a couple years. These UCL injuries, basically what we hear on Ohtani is they're debating on if he should have the surgery in October. If he should have Tommy John surgery, not pitch the entirety of his first year of his contract wherever he goes, and then just bat and then come back in 2025. That would be the same timeline for Bautista. Like I said, one of the best closers in baseball. He throws 105 miles per hour. So much torque on that arm. But the elbow is giving out. He's on the 15-day IL for now. But that could obviously be much, much longer. Baltimore took 2 or 3 against Colorado over the weekend, but that's not the biggest deal to them in my mind. I think they feel comfortable that they can win the American League East. Tampa Bay remains in the mix. They're not going away. They took 2 or 3 from the Yankees. And even without Wander Franco, and as we talked about many times, the parade of injuries they've had, they continue to battle, they continue to fight, and they're only a few games back of Baltimore. But with a young group, you look at guys like Anthony Santander, who's been in Baltimore a long time. He was there when the team sucked, when they were losing 100 games a year, and now they're good. And I think it was a long shot with Bautista to expect Baltimore to win a World Series this year. I didn't think they'd get to the World Series itself, even with the best record in the American League, because I don't trust their starting pitching enough. But if this team can overcome this injury and you see them battle through it, and youngsters like Gunnar Henderson, who's just a stud, Adley Rutschman, the next great young catcher who can also hit, which is such a rarity in the game right now. I'm interested to see how Baltimore, they're going to the south side of Chicago to play the White Sox, which is a great thing. When you have injuries, it's a great thing to play the White Sox anytime right now because their team just sucks. But it'll be a battle for this Baltimore team to overcome this. But that's a huge injury from over the weekend. The Toronto Blue Jays also suffered an injury. Eric Swanson, who they acquired last offseason from Seattle, in a trade that's worked out for both teams, but I think Toronto's been very happy. Swanson has been kind of their 8th inning guy, really stable, reliable. Something flared up. Sounds like it's not going to be too long. He goes on the 15-day IL, but this is the time of year you need him. You're in a race for a wild card position. And so he goes on the IL, and then yesterday, Teoscar Hernandez, who's hit a homer in back-to-back games, hits the go-ahead home run for Seattle as they sweep the Kansas City Royals over the weekend. So Swanson out, and then in the Blue Jays game, Bo Bichette leaves the game with quad tightness, and Matt Chapman leaves the game with a finger injury. Both guys, nothing new yet if they're going to be in the lineup tonight when they open a 3-game set against the Washington Nationals. It's interesting. Seattle had such a poor start. Such a poor start. The team couldn't buy a win. Their pitching was terrible other than Luis Castillo. And they battled. But I remember talking at the trade deadline. I believed in this team that they'd make it. They'd make the playoffs. I didn't think they'd win their division, which they still might not. But I saw this morning they are 32-14 since July 1. The best record in baseball since July 1st. They had the All-Star game in Seattle. Julio Rodriguez did not win the home run derby. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. did. But Julio Rodriguez is batting .420 his last 8 games. He's the hottest hitter in baseball. The team doesn't lose. And okay, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. hit a big home run yesterday. About damn time, to quote Lizzo. But the Blue Jays still aren't winning. They don't have Swanson in the big moments. So they have to throw Romano out for too many times. Then you get in an extra inning situation. They actually try to bunt, which is what you should do, but Biggio can't even do that correctly. So a guy's thrown out diving into third, and before you know it, they give up 4 runs in the 11th with Jay Jackson coming up in the replacement move for Swanson. Looking at this team, Toronto's better than Seattle. They are. I mean, Julio Rodriguez might be better than any player on the Blue Jays roster. But that doesn't mean just because you have one really good player, ask the Angels, doesn't mean you're going to be good. But you can go through it, the underperforming players. their inability to make a play at a certain time, to get a bunt down, to win a game that you just have to win, plain and simple. You got the Guardians on a Sunday afternoon. The building is packed. Another sold-out game in Toronto. You have your home fans there, and you lay an egg against the Guardians, who are below 500, who are not going to make the playoffs. The Terry Francona swan song, his last year in baseball probably. And you lose that game? It just can't happen. Just the stupid mistakes that team makes. It's really something. The lack of clutch hitting, the lack of depth they have if anybody does go down. So now Seattle, who were games and games behind Toronto, not only passed the Toronto Blue Jays in the wildcard standings, they passed the Houston Astros and they passed the Texas Rangers because they are first place in the American League West. The Texas Rangers have lost 9 of the last 10 games, and in those 9 losses, 6 of them have come from blown saves. Will Smith, Aroldis Chapman, it doesn't matter. They can't get a save. Happened again yesterday. They lose in extra innings, the 13th inning, on a 4-pitch walk. Minnesota walks them off. They can't close a game out. They're scoring runs, but they can't keep them out of the park. They can't keep them in the park, when their pitchers are on the mound. Now Houston is on their heels, and Seattle has passed them. But baseball, the schedule, it's set up well the last couple weeks of the season. Seeing Seattle play Kansas City, and then you got the Blue Jays playing the Nationals, who cares? And then they play the Oakland and the Colorado. So the Blue Jays, this is the cupcake of cupcake schedules. You don't have a good team for 2 weeks. You don't have a team that cares about anything for 2 weeks. This is it. They got, I think they have a 12 games. 10 wins. 10 wins minimum. I might be like, oh no, that's a lot. You're playing garbage. You're playing Oakland and Colorado and the Nationals. Those need to be 10 out of 12. You want to be a playoff team? Ross Atkins met the media on Friday, says, I trust this team, yada, yada, yada. You're 2.5 games back now of the Houston Astros. It was a half game, then all of a sudden, okay, you're 2.5 games back. Houston's got a tougher series. They got to go to Boston. Boston just beat them on Thursday, 17-1. Boston's still competing for something. So they have motivation to play well because they look at the Blue Jays and say, oh, we can catch them in the standings. They stink. Seattle has Oakland, I think. So we got to get through this malaise of bad series for these teams that they'll probably win games since the Mariners get the Mets. Houston gets the Yankees, which is an easy series. But you got Houston. Houston plays Texas 3 more times, which starts a week from today. Seattle closes their season with 4 straight games against the Texas Rangers. So it all comes down to those divisional games and how you perform in them. It's August 28th, and the Blue Jays are by no means out of it. But it's been all year. Oh, this team, they're going to find it. They're going to put it together. They're too talented. When? It's got to be now. And I'll tell you, if Bo Bichette goes down, he had quad tightness and he had to leave the game. Hopefully it's just a cramp. Give him an IV, rehydrate, he'll be ready to play tonight. I don't know. But if he goes back on the IL and Santiago Espinal is playing every other day, they're not a lock to beat these bad teams. The Nationals stink, but hey, Cleveland's not much better. Oakland's brutal, but again, Colorado, they lost 8 in a row. They took one off Baltimore. Who knows? Maybe. But the Nationals are 61 and 70. They're not a good baseball team. We have to be ready for them, but this should be a series. You win. You sweep them. 3-gamer. I said this before. Bo Bichette's been their best player all year. Best hitter, batting over 300 still in August. That's hard to do. Clutch situations, all that. They're putting him leadoff hitter. Another thing, if I'm the Blue Jays, I put George Springer back at leadoff. The Whit Merrifield experience was good, and George Springer is swinging the bat pretty well right now. I get that. But get some juice to start the game. Get something. He's hitting home runs. I think he's feeling it a little bit. I'd put him at leadoff tonight. That's where he's meant to hit. That's his best position. Merrifield's gone quiet. Merrifield's likely playing too much baseball. They just don't have the depth to replace him. He's got to play every day either in left or in second base because they have nobody else that can play there. Paul DeYoung, who they got at the trade deadline as their depth, they cut. He's now on the San Francisco Giants. 13 this season. He actually went 3 for 4 or 3 for 5 in his first game as San Francisco Giant. Hasn't got a hit since. But hey, he helped them win a game. What else? Arizona Diamondbacks took 3 of 4 from the Cincinnati Reds this week. That was big to me. Corbin Carroll, who's one of the funnest players to watch in all of baseball. He's the 4th rookie in Major League history. 20-plus home runs, 40-plus stolen bases. I think he has 6 triples as well. He's a fun player. The Diamondbacks, they always seem to be in close games. They were in another one yesterday, tied game in the 8th. They took it over and they won the game 5-2. So they are now in the 3rd wildcard spot in the National League, only a half game back of the Chicago Cubs for the 2nd spot. The San Francisco Giants, Cincinnati Reds trailed them both by a game and a half. Miami, the Marlins they're trailing them now by 3. So you still have that race down the stretch for the wildcard positions. But the Diamondbacks open a series in Chavez Ravine tonight to play the Dodgers. Also, the Reds play the Giants. So a big series for both those teams. The Diamondbacks are not going to catch them in the division, but they need those games. Zach Gallen, who, hard to argue, he's not the favorite to win the National League Cy Young right now, is on the hill. He's been money all season long. We'll see if he can do it again tonight against a division rival. In the American League, Garrett Cole is the obvious answer, and normally in baseball it doesn't matter how good your team record is. Ohtani will still win the MVP despite the fact that the Angels didn't make the playoffs. The year he won his first MVP, they didn't make the playoffs, obviously. Acuna will win the National League MVP. The Braves will obviously win their division, make the playoffs. But I wonder about Luis Castillo, who went 7 scoreless yesterday. His ERA continues to fall down. He's been awesome all season long. Looking at his numbers, he's 11-7 with a 3.01 ERA. Had 6 Ks yesterday, only 1 hit allowed, only 1 walk. So he's doing everything he can to help the team win. He was a huge part of their turnaround. You start the to feel it a little bit, to get the momentum. Garrett Cole is 11-4 with a 2.95 ERA. It's obviously better. He pitched 7 2/3 on Friday night, had 11 strikeouts. I think the rest of the year matters for both of these teams. Obviously, it doesn't matter to the Yankees because they're not going to make the playoffs, but how Garrett Cole pitches down the stretch, how Luis Castillo pitches down the stretch. If the Mariners do end up winning the American League West, that would be a big deal. Overcoming all of that, making the playoffs for the first time in a very long time last year, following that up with a divisional crown, could help the voters. Could also help that they don't want to vote for a Yankee. Potentially just want to give it to Castillo. A great trade from the Mariners. So keep our eyes on that. But some big series this week. Astros, Red Sox, the Rangers need to find a way to win a game. They get the right team to do it. They play the Mets this week. The Mariners have the Athletics beginning tonight at home. Blue Jays host the Nationals for 3. So all these series are important. All these games are important. You have a little over a month left to figure out where you're going to stack up. But the National League West, you know the Dodgers are going to win it. The National League East, you know the Braves are going to win it. National League Central, it's a little more up in the air, but the Brewers are pulling away. They have a 4-game lead on Chicago and a 6-game lead on Cincinnati. So unless there's a huge fall-off, Milwaukee will win that division. But you look around, Seattle has a 1-game lead on Texas and a 1-game lead on Houston. Anybody's game. Minnesota has a 6-game lead on Cleveland, so that's wrapped up. And then Baltimore only has a 2-game lead on Tampa. Baltimore with 81 wins. Tampa has 80. They had that hot start. Yes, they had their peaks and valleys, but they're winning games now. They seem to be a motivated club. If you missed a little kerfuffle yesterday, Randy Arozarena, Harold Ramirez both get hit by pitches, and Randy Arozarena went on to steal a couple bases and rub it in a little bit, just like only he can do. So I think that team's a little pissed. I think they're a little angry. Wander Franco has put a kind of a poor light on them, but they continue to play hard. So kudos to Tampa Bay for what they've done and they're only 2 games back of Baltimore. Baltimore has that big injury, so we'll see what happens down the stretch between those 2 teams. So still a lot to be decided in baseball, and baseball needs some races with the NFL and college football slates returning very soon. U.S. Open, I mentioned, is ongoing. Begins today. Prime time at the U.S. Open tonight. There's nothing better in tennis than prime time at the U.S. Open. I love Wimbledon. I love the grass. But the night matches are phenomenal. Tonight, Coco Gauff is on Arthur Ashe Stadium to kick it off. Winning in Cincinnati, winning in Washington. So she gets that respect. Caroline Wozniacki and her comeback is second on Armstrong. For the men, Milos Raonic, who's never been a great competitor at the U.S. Open, has never broken through here, not like he did at Wimbledon. He's first on Armstrong. He'll be going up against Stefanos Tsitsipas tonight in a big match. Novak Djokovic will be second on Arthur Ashe Stadium, but big opportunity for Milos Raonic. Felix Auger-Aliassime is in action today against Mackenzie McDonald of the United States. So a tricky opponent for him. So far, you're seeing on the women's side, Karolina Muchova, the finalist in Cincinnati, and the finalist at the French Open is through. It looks like Victoria Azarenka is going to cruise to her first round match. Belinda Bencic, no problem. Taylor Townsend, the Canadian woman the American woman's going to cruise through. Iga Swiatek is on the court, the number 1 seed. She's already up a break in her first round match. The news for Canada, which this isn't surprising news, Bianca Andreescu, the only Canadian ever to win a Grand Slam, a singles Grand Slam, has withdrawn from the U.S. Open with a back injury, joining her fellow countryman, Denis Shapovalov. So 2 Canadians not in the field, arguably the 2 biggest names in Canada right now. Bianca, obviously a former champion here. Both are not present. Bianca is the greatest tennis player in Canadian history. Even if she doesn't play anymore, she won a Grand Slam. That's it. That's, to me, when people say, who's the greatest Raptor of all time? If you're talking about just that fact, it's Kawhi Leonard. It's not Kyle Lowry, because Kyle Lowry played there for a decade and then he won. Kawhi Leonard came for a season. He won them a title. I don't care how long you're there as long as you perform. Bianca was great for a short period of time. But in that short period of time, she won the National Bank Open in Canada, and then she went 2 weeks later and won the US Open, beating Serena Williams, the greatest tennis player maybe of all time, men or women. So she's fantastic. You start with that caveat. But since she won, she has been an abysmal failure, and she's been out of sight, out of mind. It's injuries, it's ads. She's falling into the Eugenie Bouchard trap, which is, I'd rather be good on social media than be good on the court. I'd rather post a pic with a thong bikini than win a Grand Slam and make the money, which more power to you. But if you're going to be a professional athlete, be a professional athlete. You don't see Novak Djokovic posting, well, he might be meeting other people, but he's not focusing on anything but tennis. He wants to win the US Open. That's his goal. He's back in the United States. He's got something to prove. Bianca, okay, I'm sure she has a back injury. I'm not saying she doesn't. But you don't play all that much. You never play. You play one match in a tournament, you'll win that, and you'll lose your next one. So you play 2 matches in an event where other people play 7. And you're injured more than they are. Carlos Alcaraz played almost over 15 hours actually. It was almost 16 hours of tennis in Cincinnati. And he almost won the damn event, and he's playing at the US Open, and he wants to go take on Djokovic in the final and beat his ass again. I'm sure his body doesn't feel all that good. Playing in Canada, playing in Washington, playing in Cincinnati. But he did it. And he's here at the US Open looking to defend his title. Rybakina played a fuck ton in Canada, then to go play in Cincinnati. Rain, all that. She has to play at 3 in the morning. She did it. She didn't love it, but now she's here competing for a Grand Slam title. She made the final at the Australian Open. You didn't play the Australian Open because you had an injury or you were sick or something. Again, she's the greatest tennis player in Canada's history because she's the only person to win a Grand Slam. Jamal Murray is the greatest tennis player, greatest basketball player in Canada's history. Better than Steve Nash. You know why? Because he won. I don't give a shit how many assists Steve Nash had. I value winning. It means something. Michael Phelps is the best because he was winning gold medals, not silver and bronze. We'll leave that for curtain jerkers. We'll leave that for fucking figure skating, okay? I don't mean to too crude on this, but that's how you value it. But she could have been so much better than this, and it pisses me off. She could be competing with Coco Gauff and with all these women, but she's just not. She's not present. Back injury, this, that. And every reporter for TSN or sports in Canada, they make mistakes. They make excuses for these people. Enough of the excuses. Can you fucking play? That's what you're contracted to do. Not to do ads for puppies or not to do this, that, or the other thing. Play your sport. Play your sport. At least Layla Annie Fernandez, who got to a final and didn't win, she's kept playing. She's focused on tennis. She loves it. She has her flaws. I don't think she's as talented as Bianca, quite frankly. She has more holes in her game, but she's playing. She's at the U.S. Open. She's trying to break through again, going another Cinderella run. But now I got a back injury, I can't play. Shapovalov's got a knee injury. Hasn't played hardly all year. I give him more rope because he normally plays. This is his first major injury. This is the first time he's missing a Grand Slam. Other than when he smacked the umpire, but that was for a different reason. But it hurts Canada for sure. I mean, you want to tune in to watch Canadians play? There's Layla. There's Felix, who knows if he'll win his first round match. He's having a hard time winning any match right now. Put up against a brick wall. The brick wall might beat him. In tennis, for Christ's sakes. If he goes up against the great Kali, remember that in the longest yards playing ping pong? Great Kali might beat him. But it's just wasted talent to me. All these women, all these athletes have injuries. They're all not feeling the best right now, but they buck up. They battle through it. They get on the court. You don't know if you can go on another run if you can't play. And is it conditioning? Is it the way she does things? I'm not a coach. But every match seems to be extremely taxing on her. To me, cardio is a problem. But it's just frustrating to me to see her not play here, and then it'll be something at the Australia. It's always something with her. And before you know it, you'll be qualifying for events like Eugenie. Eugenie tried to qualify the U.S. Open, didn't make it through the second round. So she's not here either. So it's too bad, honestly. Maybe she'll turn it around. She's still young, yes. But if you're not working at your craft, if you're not working to get better, well, everybody else is, you're not going to get any better. People are going to pass you in anything in life. You're not practicing your SATs when you're young and you want to get into a really good college and you're out drinking while other people are studying, they're probably going to do better on the test than you. I can vouch for this. I wasn't doing the SATs, but I was out drinking instead of studying for math tests, and I didn't do that great on math. Hey, it didn't hurt me, but might hurt you when you're a professional athlete. But disappointing for her, but not surprising that she's not at this event. UFC. Max Holloway versus the Korean Zombie in Singapore, early Saturday morning. Really fun event. 5 a.m. start time here for the prelims. 13 fights on the card. I thought the atmosphere in there was phenomenal, in particular for the main event. The Korean Zombie walks out to his great walkout song, Zombie. Max Holloway is out carrying the Hawaiian flag, obviously with the horrible things that are happening in Maui with the wildfires. And it was a phenomenal fight. Zombie took it to him early. Max Holloway's doing Max Holloway things, landing in close strikes, closing the distance when he had to, and he's just being Max Holloway. But to start the third round, Zombie said, you know what, fuck this. I'm going for it. He went on the attack, trying to land some big shots. He does land a few. Holloway stumbles back a bit. Zombie tucks in, keeps his head a little too low, his chin out. Max Holloway nails him. He drops to the ground in just a massive knockout. He jumps out of the cage, goes, hugs, and kisses his wife. It was a phenomenal scene. He shouts out Zombie when he's being interviewed, saying he's a legend, honored to share there. And he doesn't even talk about his next opponent. He just says, can you donate to Hawaii? Can you do anything to help me? Can you do anything to help my people? And it was special for Max to be able to do that. He's a phenomenal fighter. And then through all of that, Zombie retires, gets saluted by the crowd, leaves his gloves in the cage. He's had a phenomenal career. And these two go out, with a bang. Obviously, Holloway's not done, but a fun fight. Max did Max stuff. He's not afraid to go toe-to-toe with anybody. He did this with Arnold Allen, and he beat him, and now he's beating Zombie. So he's on a 2-fight winning streak following his loss to Alexander Volkanovski. So obviously in fighting, when one fight's done, you think, what's next? I mentioned this last week, and I think it's the fight to make. I think there's a couple. He can fight Aljamain Sterling, at 145 pounds next year, because I don't think he's going to fight again in 2023. Early 2024, Sterling, you want to fight Sugar again. I get it. But I don't think you're going to get an immediate rematch. So if you're not going to get an immediate rematch, do you really want to sit around and wait? Your training partner, best friend, Merab Davishvili, is also waiting. He wants a title opportunity. He has beef with Sugar. It's honestly more beef than you do. So it makes more sense for Merab to get a title shot than Aljamain, in a sense, when it just comes to business. Sterling deserves one just on merit, but I think Merab, when it comes to heat, when it comes to just overall, this would be fun. Yeah, that makes some sense. So I think Max could fight Sterling at 145. Sterling moves up. He beats Max Holloway. He's right there as the next number one contender against Volk or Ilia Topuria. Or does he go fight Justin Gaethje for the BMF title at 155 pounds? He says he wants to win 145 again. He says this after. He said he wants to fight Volk for a fourth time. I understand that. That was his belt. He has never beaten Alexander Volkanovski. But again, I don't think the UFC wants to make that fight. I just don't think it's something they're interested in because we've seen it a lot. Topuria, Arnold Allen. He's beaten Arnold Allen. He's beaten Zombie. This year, who does he fight next that would put him up there? I suppose that a Sterling fight would work. A former champion, you go beat him. But he's beaten Yair Rodriguez. He's beaten almost everybody else. So if he's going to stay at 145 pounds, it almost has to be Sterling. It kind of has to be Sterling. $155 would be fun. But I think Gaethje's looking around saying, once Charles and Islam, whoever wins there, I should get the next shot. I don't disagree with him. I think he should be rooting for Islam to win that fight because it's a fresh matchup. They've never fought. Justin's fought Khabib way back when. So there's history there. Dustin Poirier and Max Holloway would make some sense. They fought before. The fights were awesome. It's been a minute since they fought. But it was in 2019, April 2019. Poirier beat Holloway by decision. So could you run that back? Yeah, absolutely. Dustin said he wants to fight. He's on Twitter all day yesterday. He wants to fight again this year. I think Max would. He said he got interviewed by Ariel a few weeks ago, and he said, I'll fight again this year. He said, I'd like to fight in that December card. Well, if Conor McGregor fights in December, which he put out on Twitter that he was this weekend, that hasn't been confirmed yet by Dana White or anybody. As far as I know, he has entered the USADA pool. So unless they're skirting USADA, I don't see that happening. But say somehow it happens because it's Conor McGregor, and you want to have McGregor and Chandler to close out 2023. Could you have Poirier and Holloway as a co-main? I think you could. Now that could be a fight that headlines a fight night. That's a 5-round fight. The only problem with that is that's another 5-round fight. Maybe 2 5-rounders? Potentially. We've seen it before. They did it earlier this year with Gilbert Burns and Bilal Muhammad. That wasn't for a title, but it was a 5-round fight. You got 2 guys that have past histories that'd be fighting one another. Poirier beat Chandler. Obviously, Poirier, McGregor, Holloway, with all of them. That would be fun. You don't necessarily have to have a championship fight on that card if you have 4 legends stepping into the cage and fighting one another. So there's options, but I just think for Holloway, if you're staying at 145, it has to be Aljamain Sterling. Because I don't see anybody else. Because even with wins over Arnold Allen and wins over Zombie, I don't think you're getting a title shot right away. Staying in that division, Giga Chikadze, Alex Caceres. Fun fight. Caceres broke his forearm in the first round, but he fought well throughout. Giga was struggling early, but he found his range, found his mark, started to land shots, landed some body blows, and he got better and better as the fight went on. He had not fought since January of 2022, and he got on the mic, said he took a lot to get back with injuries and all that, but he's back now and he's coming for everybody. And he called out Yair Rodriguez to a fight in December. Yair Rodriguez's last fight was for the belt, and he got beat handily by Alexander Volkanovski, like most people do. So Giga is at number 9 in the rankings. Korean Zombie just retired, so that means he'll at least leap up to 8. Maybe he'll even pass Calvin Kattar, who has not fought in a long time. Looking at it, I think you could make that fight. I think if you do that, my only question is, who is Arnold Allen fighting? No news on him yet when it comes to booking a fight. Yair and Arnold would make some sense. 2 prospects. Yes, Yair got an opportunity to title. Arnold Allen's coming off a loss. Calvin Kattar is there. There still is Josh Emmett, although he's aging. He's still present. He still loves to fight. Got the hell beat out of him by Topuria in Jacksonville. But who knows? But he looked good. Yair Rodriguez is a tricky opponent. If he gets a win over Yair Rodriguez, he could be looking at a title shot in the not too distant future. He could have called up Max Holloway. That would have been good, but he didn't. I think he knew what he was doing. He doesn't want to fight Max Holloway. Thinks Yair Rodriguez the easier opponent, which he is, but he's also one of the most crafty fighters in the entire UFC roster. Just the way he fights, his style, so unorthodox, so tricky. But an impressive win for him. The co-main event that should have been the co-main event. Aaron Blanchfield, Tyler Santos. Tyler Santos won the first round. better striking, finding her mark, and I thought, wow, Tyler's going to win this fight, but Erin Blanchfield's cardio is unmatched. And it won her the fight. She just kept pushing forward. She did not land a takedown the entire fight. Tyler Santos was 12 for 12 on her takedown defense. But Erin was just relentless. She just said, I'm going to continue to push forward. I'm going to keep trying here. I'm going to wear on her. And Tyler is incredibly strong. But Erin started to land strikes and tight, started to just her boxing improved as the fight went on, and her overall just movement, her overall time in the ring led to her victory. It's just her pace, her improved striking got her the win. It's her 6th straight win in the UFC, has not lost in the UFC. And she says on the mic, I want to fight the winner of Shevchenko and Grasso in 3 weeks in Vegas. And I agree with her. Tyler Santos had just fought for the belt, and she beat the woman who had fought for the belt. She has beef with Shevchenko. The Grasso fight would be fun. She has not lost in the UFC. She's just as big a star as Manon Fiorot. Rose Namajunas might be bigger, but we got to see who wins that fight in Paris on Saturday. Still up in the air. I don't know who's going to win that fight. We'll talk about that fight later in the week. It's interesting. Rose moving up in weight. But to me, Erin Blanchfield, she's getting better with every fight. She gets a tougher opponent. She guts away. She gets a win. You're fighting a strong opponent who limited what you do best, which is your wrestling, your ground control, getting your opponents into submissions. And yet you still won. You still won the fight. So credit to Erin for finding a way to overcome what was a difficulty for her in this particular matchup. But to me, it doesn't matter. It should be her against the winner of Shevchenko and Grasso in 2024 for the belt. She's proven it. She's now beaten Andrade, a former champion. She's beaten Santos, who fought for the belt and I think won, who beat Shevchenko in that fight. With those 2 wins, you don't need to go beat anybody else. If I'm her, I'm sitting on my spot. I'm going to Vegas in a couple weeks. I'm attending that event. I think it helps when you're selling the next fight. Go to that event, watch the main event, and put yourself in position to be the next one to get a title opportunity. But a big win for her. A really great fight. The rest of the card, Anthony Smith pulled out a gutsy win over Ryan Spann. His eye was messed up in the second round. He took a huge shot. Ryan's got to be kicking himself. He should have ended this in the second. Ground and pound, just landing shots, but he let him off the hook. Anthony Smith battled back in the third, had more activity, was more aggressive, and he gets a win. He was on a losing skid, but he gets a big W. Doesn't call anybody out. Doesn't say, it was kind of he goes, I just want to go home with my family, my wife and kids. So it's kind of up in the air what's next for Anthony Lionheart Smith. But you beat a guy like Ryan Spann, he's now beaten him twice. He lost to Johnny Walker. He's got beef with Alex Pereira now, with Pereira saying, basically saying, oh, you're a bum, you're washed up, you're the only reason you're in the main event because John Jones let you. So I've never seen Pereira be like this, but clearly didn't like what Anthony Smith had to say about him. But I don't know how much longer he wants to fight. I don't think he can get back to title contention. Does he want to fight a guy below him again, like Khalil Roundtree Jr., who's on the come up? I wouldn't want to if I'm Anthony Smith. The dude's a power puncher, and that's Nikita Krylov. Could you book that fight? He last fought in March. Haven't no fight announcements on him. He's won 3 fights in a row. Rakic hasn't fought in over a year. Waiting to see if he comes back. Dominic Reyes hasn't fought. Alonzo Menifield's on the come up. So I think Anthony Smith just needs to. He fought pretty quickly after that Johnny Walker loss, and he gets a victory. I just think he should sit back and kind of reflect on what he wants to do and what's next for him, if at all, if he wants to get back into the cage moving forward. Junior Tafa knocked out Parker Porter just like his brother did in February. So both Tafa brothers are now knocked out Parker Porter. He improves to 5-1. He lost his UFC debut against Muhammad Usman, but he gets the victory, did it quicker than his brother did. And his brother Justin will be fighting at UFC 293 in Australia, where he'll be rematching Austin Lane after their fight was called off due to a eye poke in Jacksonville. That was the main card. There was lots of fights. Like I said, 13 fights in this event. Waldo Cortez Acosta, knockout in the first round, big heavyweight tilt. Garrett Armfield with a big win for him. He looks good. Michael Olisichuk, big knockout over Chidi. Song Kanong beats Orlando Bedoya. Billy Goff with an upset, you could say, over Kinoshita. J.J. Aldrich got a big finish. So it was a decent card. We move on to UFC Paris this weekend. Cyril Gane, Spivak in the main event. Manafaro, Rose Namajunas, Benoit Saint Denis, Thiago Moses, Ozdemir. A couple fights have been called off due to visa issues and injuries, so I think the UFC is scrambling a little bit to put together a decent card. What else can we talk? Viktor Hovland, Tour Championship winner. Won last week at the BMW, launched him into second place heading into the weekend, and he finishes at minus 27, winning the 18 million, winning the event by 5 strokes. It was never close. And a phenomenal couple weeks for him. But this year he wins the Memorial. He then wins the BMW, wins the Tour Championship. He will be representing Team Europe at the Ryder Cup in a couple weeks. But he truly is one of the best golfers in the world. I think the best golfer in the world to not win a major currently is Viktor Hovland. He's that good. Xander Schauffele came in second. Great week for him. Started at minus 3, gets to minus 22. Shot 8 under on a Sunday. He was feeling it, but Hovland goes 7 under. He goes 8 under in the final pairing together. Was never all that interesting. I never thought Hovland was going to lose, but Schauffele played some of the best golf he's ever played. But he wins $6.5 million for coming in second place, so a decent day for him. Wyndham Clark came in third at minus 16, U.S. Open champ this year, so he had a phenomenal year to launch himself into contention and on the map. He had Rory minus 14, Cantlay at minus 13, Scheffler, Fleetwood, and Morikawa at minus 11. Hot start for Morikawa. Scheffler was the leader at the start. He had a disastrous week at East Lake. I think he's looking just to get the hell out of there. He did finish the year with the most time finishing inside the top 10, playing some incredible golf. So he deserves a lot of credit. He needs to figure out his putting. But other than that, he's arguably the best golfer in the world. But now we got the Ryder Cup in a couple weeks. That's upcoming. This is really the end of the golf season. You go through the playoff, you get through the Tour Championship. You get the PGA coming up. You got an event in Napa. The Ryder Cup is in Rome, Italy, the last weekend in September. So that's coming up. Sanderson Farms, good little tournament. The Zozo in late October in Japan. And then you start gearing up. There's tournaments in Georgia, the Bahamas. But yeah, this was it. But a good year. The Ryder Cup should be fun. Picking teams coming up soon as well, which is always dramatic. Brooks Koepka wants to be on. Will they pick a live guy? Will Zach Johnson pick a live guy? Koepka did win the PGA Championship this year, so that helps his case. He won an event on the live tour. So we'll see. The PGA Tour still has a lot to figure out when it comes to the live and when they're all going to come together and things of that nature with Congress and all of that. But a great weekend for Viktor Hovland, winning $18 million. College football was back, sort of. Week 0. Few, I wouldn't call them interesting games, but a few games. Notre Dame playing Navy in Dublin. They won the game 42-3. Their O-line looked fantastic, bringing back 4 returners. Sam Hartman played smart, accurate, on point, didn't have to do all that much, didn't have to take big chances. But Notre Dame looked good. I don't know if their running backs are great. I just think their offensive line is, and that'll keep them in games. He had time to throw. Their running backs had huge holes to run through. Their defense was solid. You can't overreact to a game against Navy, but a strong start for Notre Dame. When it comes to USC played San Jose State. Caleb Williams, reigning Heisman Trophy winner. Pretty damn good start to his 3rd year in college football. 18 for 25, 278 yards, 4 touchdown passes. Just phenomenal stuff. He's the favorite to win the Heisman again. I'll talk about this with Matt Wright on Thursday. But he looked great. He made an incredible throw off of a bad snap, threw it down the field for a tub. I have a new favorite, Zachariah Branch, freshman for USC. He's the new Tavon Austin. He's used on special teams. He's used just in gadget plays and the slot. He's electric. He's fun to watch already, so I'm looking forward to seeing how Lincoln Riley gets him more and more involved in the offense following the departures of guys such as Travis Dye and Jordan Addison, who are both in the NFL. College football starts up basically on Thursday. Rematch of last year's opening game. You got Florida visiting Utah. Fun game. Utah ranked number 14 heading into the season. Also that night you have Nebraska playing Minnesota. Be the first game for Luke Fickell, who's the new head coach of Nebraska after leaving Cincinnati. And Minnesota had an interesting offseason because they had some rumors about that program and what's going on with PJ Fleck. But it really starts Thursday. Florida, Utah, North Carolina State, UConn, not a bad game either. Wake Forest, post Sam Hartman, Kent State, UCF. And it all gets going this week. Week 1, college football. Thursday, we're going to talk transfers, new head coaches, what to expect. We'll predict our Final Four. I'm just stoked it's back. All day Saturday, LSU and Florida State on Sunday, primetime. Oh, what a game. NFL's coming, college football is back. It's a great time to be alive. Hopefully the weather stays decent. That's the perfect way to be. That's it for today. We got baseball tonight. The U.S. Open's ongoing. We have the NFC East preview show tomorrow on the pod. Back to a regular show Wednesday. Matt Wright and I will do a podcast on Thursday, teeing up the college football season. So until then, enjoy the rest of your day. We'll talk to you tomorrow. This is To The Point.